How's it going, everybody? This is the Figuring Out Finance podcast, episode number 19, coming at you with chapter 7 from the Rich Dad Poor Dad series. My name is Chris Rickenbaugh, and I will be your host. And before we jump into it, go ahead and check out the figuringoutfinance.com website to take the survey and sign up for my weekly newsletter to stay updated on all things figuring it out finance. You can email me with questions at figuringitoutfinance@gmail.com, and go follow me on TikTok and on Instagram, where you can stay up to date on what I'm doing, some of the deals I'm working on, some creative deals going on in the real estate world with maybe a house development or building a house on some land that's seller financed or leased, and got another one with maybe some other land that's going to be taken care of. So jumping into today's chapter number 7 from Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's all about overcoming obstacles. So overcoming obstacles is normal in life. So you're going to encounter this everywhere, but on your way to financial freedom, everybody's got their opinions, but it may not even be theirs. Maybe that's just something they've heard. So being able to dive in, understand it for yourself, understand fear, you're going to be able to come out on top and make an educated decision and not just follow the crowd. So Robert starts out with talking about the primary difference between a rich person and a poor person is how they manage fear. So the 5 reasons why financially literate people still don't develop an asset column is fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance. So I'm going to start out here with cynicism because I think this is one of the heavier topics here, but who are you listening to for advice? You know, has that person done the thing, and why didn't it work out for them? And understanding that, so has that person done the thing? So encountering this in real estate, you start to talk to a lot of people. Once you get excited about it, you're talking about it, and people are going to come at you from all directions, whether it's family, your friends, somebody close to you. Oh, well, interest rates are through the roof. You shouldn't be investing now. I can't buy a house. There's no deals out there. You have to stop and ask yourself, what are they doing in that field that they understand that? Is that just something they've heard or somebody told them at their work or their job, and now that's just become their opinion? And that's where I really struggle, because I start to ask those questions that get a little invasive, and I'll go into that here in a minute. But, you know, understanding why that person thinks that way. So back to the real estate example, I've talked to a lot of people about real estate. So I walked into a banker. He was an investment banker. I was just looking to get a little bit more information on maybe getting loans to buy a house. And he says right out of the way, never invest in real estate. It's the worst investment you could ever make. And I'm thinking, what? It's like, I've just read all these books. Like, I'm excited about this. Like, let's do it. And he started to tell me about his experience. Like, oh man, you're going to have to take care of tenants, toilets, and all this other stuff. And, you know, being able to read the books and understand what he's talking about and what the people who are successful talk about, you know, he just didn't manage it right. Now, he's not going to sit there and tell me, oh, I didn't manage it right. You know, I screwed up. He's going to say how bad everybody else is. So being able to understand it from that side, you're able to, you know, fight through that cynicism. But one of the examples in the book, so Robert's friend was freaking out about oil and gas prices and had the research to prove it. So instead of just taking that cynicism and, you know, staying in place, not doing anything about it, Robert went out and bought stock in an up-and-coming oil company and made almost $30,000 in 3 months. So that's taking an opportunity, fighting through the cynicism, doing your homework. His friend had the homework and ran away and just complained and sat and did nothing, but Robert said, well, that looks like an opportunity, because he was able to keep his eyes open and look for those opportunities because he knew investing. You know, he didn't do anything crazy. His friend had all the research and could have done the exact same thing, but Robert was the one who took action. So you have to stay away from those Chicken Littles and do your homework and understand for yourself why it is or is not true. And you're going to be able to do better than a lot of other people in life. So a little bit how I think about this is I ask a lot of questions. So I think people think I'm a jerk because I ask a lot of questions about how they know something, because it sounds very challenging. And this has happened in the last 2 jobs I've worked, because it does sound very challenging. But what I'm doing is trying to understand how they know it and if I trust them. Because I could have understood, or I could have taken the first guy's comments about real estate and said, don't invest, this is horrible. And he doesn't know. How do I know if he actually invested in real estate? What did he do in his business that didn't work? He's going to blame everybody else, but I'm able to listen and understand, oh, well, he could have made a couple changes here and worked with tenants. But from my experience, the people who get defensive and lash out don't normally know what they're talking about. And the people who answer and give a genuine conversation do know what they're talking about and respect the question, because they understand that I'm trying to learn rather than just challenge and call them out. Because it's not calling somebody out, it's just asking questions. So this is why developing your own opinion is so important, and why going with the crowd is just going to get you in trouble. You have to develop your own opinion on everything, because if you're just going along with the crowd, you're going to end up like all of those other people. And just because everybody else is doing it doesn't make it right. So moving on to the next part here is handling failure. So failure is something you're going to go through all in life. So you can either be a victim to it, blame everybody else, find out how you're the hero in the story, but sometimes you fail. What are you going to learn from it? And how are you going to be able to use that experience for the better? So Rich Dad talks about Texans and how they manage their fear and defeat by doing it big, like the Alamo. And that was one of the stories that kind of pumped him up. Before going into the big deals, he would talk about the Alamo, because I'm not 100% the one person to tell you about the Alamo. I know we studied it in grade school, but obviously I don't remember enough of it other than it was a big stand and a lot of people died. So moving on from that, because I don't know what I'm talking about there, but that's what Rich Dad's story was that hyped him up before big deals. Anyway, but for most people, the reason they don't win financially is because the pain of losing is far greater than the joy of being rich. And now there's going to be so many people that hear that and say, if you tell that to somebody, they're going to complain and whine, and, they're not going to take your word for it, because that's a really tough statement. It's saying, well, I don't want to do really well financially because I'm more afraid of losing. Nobody's going to say that. That's a really, really honest question that you have to ask yourself, and that deep down you have to be able to take risks. So whether you fail or you lose, depending on how you look at it, you have to be able to look at it as an event that happened, and what did you learn from that experience? So that could be good, that could be bad, and you have to try and turn that failure into an opportunity to learn. And that's what I've been learning through real estate. My first deal didn't come with this first house hack. I had a duplex under contract and actually put money into the deal for the due diligence and lost $2,000 in a time where $2,000 is quite a bit. If you have $10,000, that's 20% of what you have. And you're kind of starting in this weird space, but I was able to learn from that. I learned the whole process of buying a house from 3 days away from the closing table. So I felt really good when I actually found the house that I wanted in a good area, and I was able to learn from that. And then through all of the rehab process, I just wanted it to be, I went in with the mindset that this is going to be a learning experience. So from the entire moving in, which I had to move all of my furniture and everything out of a 3-story apartment. So I was on the 3rd story, move it into a moving truck, and then move it into my house all on my own. So, I'm not afraid of the hard work there, but I went from there being able to put together what needed to be fixed, doing little things around the house, painting a room, and then being able to put together the whole scope of work like I was taught on Bigger Pockets and just followed their processes. And the project turned out really, really well, except for, some little hiccups in there in between, but you're going to have that with every project. But now I feel really comfortable going into another project because I've already done this one and I took it as a learning process. And it's going to be a little bit stressful, but you're going to be able to learn from it. And that's what I feel like I've done through this first flip. Now looking at some different options in the cards here in the future. But back to the story here. So most people are not playing to win. They're playing it safe. So what he means by this is they stick to these poor people, they stick with their mutual funds and let other people handle their money, saying that they don't have the time or don't understand it at all. But the thing is, that investment is okay for them and better than 70% of the population because you're going to have retirement saved, you're going to have a little money working for you. But that's not going to get you out of your job. That's going to be sitting there after working for 40 years. So do you want to wait that 40 years while your money's not working for you? Or would you rather take a couple risks and be able to retire early, like some of these 20-year-olds now being able to start their own businesses? And Brian Lubin is one of the guys I'm listening to now where, he was podcasting and had to figure out how to replace a $250,000 job. And, he tried to do it in 6 months and he did. He started his podcast, started his community and made $100,000 in 48 hours. It's like, that's the guy I'm going to listen to because he's done it. He's going to teach me how to do it. So that's why I listen to other people's podcasts. The Bigger Pockets podcast is full of those stories, maybe not the 20-year-olds, but just different stories of being able to get out of the rat race and being able to live the life you want to live. Because I just have different goals than people, and a lot of other people just haven't thought that way. Because I don't want to work till I'm 65 and nickel and dime my way to freedom after I hit that retirement age and I can pull from a mutual fund. That's why I'm buying assets and educating myself and learning and taking the risks now. Because I've listened to so many people on those Bigger Pockets podcasts to where they get in financial trouble and they're at, feels like rock bottom, but they're able to get through it. And that's Lexi and Cam Cathcart on the Better Life podcast and, so many other stories. They've come from rock bottom in debt and they've been able to come out of it within 2 to 3 years or less. So I'm going to listen to those people other than the ones trying to put money in a mutual fund because I want to live. So I'm going to leave you here with one of the last topics here is to ask yourself the bigger questions. And it's a great segue into what do I need to do to live the life that I want to live? It's an interesting question to really ponder and write some things down about. What does your perfect life look like? Write that down into a Google Doc, and then because it puts that picture in your mind and gives you a goal to work towards. Because a lot of people, they're just running with the blinders on. Brian Lubin gives a great example of, these guys who get in these jobs and, they just put the hammer down, take work home with them, never see their family or their kids. It's like driving down a highway with your family in the car and then smoke starts rolling up and they look behind them, their family's gone. They left miles ago. And that's what's happening in people's lives is they're not taking the time to slow down and really figure out where they're going. They're just getting on the highway and going and not being able to add things to their life. And so another one of these questions is, how do I never work again? So Brian Lubin talks about that as if his goal is to retire in 5 years, his coach told him to change the question to what do you have to do to retire in 6 months? That's a game-changing question because it just shifts your whole focus. It's like, well, I thought I was going to have 5 years to do this. Well, change it to 6 months and see how motivated you get. Very, very interesting. Because these questions kind of help you get over the laziness and analysis paralysis, because when that year 4 comes around and you have a year left and you haven't done anything, what are you going to do? You're probably going to keep doing the same thing. So I'll leave you with this quote from the book. What I know makes me money. What I don't know loses me money. So that should be your sign to go out, read a book, get educated, take a small course, watch a YouTube video on something you're interested in. Just go change your life. So this will be episode 19 of the Figuring Out Finance podcast. Only about two more episodes in this Rich Dad Poor Dad series, so I appreciate you tuning in if you're still listening and following along on the podcast and dealing with me as my sound on this podcast probably isn't very good, but we're working to get it figured out. And I guess that's me signing off. This is Chris Rickenbaugh from the Figuring It Out Finance podcast. We'll see you next time.